Well, g'day everybody, and welcome to an update that I want to give you on the JobKeeper payroll items and actually understanding how these new payroll items are required by the ATO and when to use them in Reckon accounts. There's been lots of questions on when do I use these items, how do I actually handle them where I've already made a pay in April, particularly. So it's timely and we're getting a lot of questions around this. So I thought I'd do this quick video for you to actually get you up to speed on what should be done now. A little bit of a disclaimer, it's general in nature, this whole session. It's not taxation, HR, investment or financial advice, and it's certainly not relating to your specific circumstances. So please get further advice around what's relevant for you and JobKeeper. By all means, you can contact us or talk to your advisor before you actually make decisions if you're unclear of something during this webinar. So first of all, there's new JobKeeper payroll items that are required by the tax office. They must be set up and they're used in certain circumstances. And they need to be set up identically as to the wording here, the uppercase, the dashes, and so forth. First one is JobKeeper-TOPUP or JobKeeper-TOPUP. It's an allowance type, other, and it's actually used when you need to top up an eligible employee's pay to get it up to the $1,500 JobKeeper amount, which is the minimum amount per fortnight. So if someone earns less than that and they're an eligible employee for JobKeeper, you'll need to pay a top-up amount to get them up to $1,500. And you'll use this item to actually record that additional amount. JobKeeper-start-FN, and we've got XX there. XX just means which fortnight you are starting as an eligible employer, and this employee is starting for JobKeeper. Now, if you're starting in April, it's going to be 01. April is sort of an all-in-one month. Think of it almost like 2 fortnights. So FN 01 needs to be on there for this payroll item. Again, it's a nil, it's an allowance type other, but it's a nil dollar value. And it needs to be included in a pay within the April period. It doesn't necessarily have to be the first pay. And we'll talk about that in a minute when I get into the examples here. JobKeeper-finish-FN XX, and XX means whichever JobKeeper fortnight that the actual employee is no longer entitled for JobKeeper. Again, this is an allowance other type. It's a nil dollar value, and it's to be included on the first pay when the employee is ineligible for JobKeeper. So a few of the questions that have come in the last few days. What are these items and when do I use them? How do I actually set them up? When should I not use them, particularly in this transition month of April and early May, perhaps? Do I use them every fortnight, and do I add them to previous pays? How do I do that? And then what if I've also already lodged my single touch payroll? What actually happens there? So we've gone through what these items are. We'll walk you through the actual setup of them in a moment, and we'll use Reckon accounts as an example, actually how to set them up. But all accounting software will have these items. Either you'll see them or they'll be in the background somewhere. When are they used? Well, as I said, the top up is used when you need to top up an employee's pay, an eligible employee for JobKeeper. You need to get it up to that minimum of $1,500 in the JobKeeper fortnight. Just on that, a lot of people are confused about people that are paid weekly. It's not $750 per week. It's $1,500 in a fortnight, a JobKeeper fortnight, and we'll talk about them in a moment. So it needs to actually, you may be better off, just squaring that up at the second week of the fortnight. So particularly if you've got employees that have got variable hours. You don't want to be in a situation where you top them up in the first week to get it to $750, let's say, and then the employee works a heap of hours in the next week and they're actually earned more than $1,500 in the next week. All that's happened there is you've just paid an extra top-up amount unnecessarily. So the JobKeeper-start-fortnight or FN 01 or whatever number it is, it's actually used when that first fortnight that you become eligible as an employer. And if you're eligible in April, it'll be fortnight 01, FN 01. Or if an employee becomes eligible at a later stage. And that's really only in the case of perhaps someone who's on workers' comp, who's permanently incapacitated at the start of JobKeeper, and then they come on after that, or someone finishes paid parental leave, you know, and then they come on a little later. There's very few examples of that. When should they not be used? You know, you can't use and you should not use these items unless you are an eligible employer and you're paying an eligible employee. So if that's not you just yet, maybe later on down the track, don't start using these items at all in your payroll. Do I use them every fortnight? No, you do not. And well, top up you may. You know, so you need to get it up to $1,500. So if someone earns less than that, you'll need to use the top up item. But the start fortnight, 01 or 02, or whenever it is that you're starting in the JobKeeper fortnights, is only used once. You do not enter it again and again and again on the employee's pay each time you pay them. It's done once and that's it. Do I add them to a previous pay? Well, you may need to, particularly in the month of April, where we're sitting here sort of now at the end of the month and trying to perhaps play catch up. You might be making a top up in May even. The ATO has extended the time period as to when you can square up April for JobKeeper payments so that you've got that minimum of $3,000 for two JobKeeper fortnights in April that are actually paid to eligible employees. And you now have up until the 8th of May to do that. What we would recommend is try and get all this finished in April. Ideally, you would have finished it on the 26th of April, but that's practically not, you know, that hasn't happened for most people because we're still battling with trying to work all these details out. But try and get it squared away by the end of April. You may have to go back and modify a previous pay to insert these items if you haven't already done it. And if you do that, then what do you have to do next? You know, how do we actually then update our single touch payroll for these actual items and let the ATO know that I've had a start month or start period of 01 for the first fortnight in JobKeeper, and by letting the ATO know that, you've got to do it quickly. It's something that's got to be done probably now, you know, the end of April. You can do it later, but it may impact as to when you're going to actually get reimbursed for the JobKeeper payment. So let's look at the JobKeeper fortnights. There's 13 of them. It starts on the 30th of March and they finish on the 27th of September. And they're the numbers, 01, 02, 03. You will only use those numbers if that is the fortnight in which you're starting JobKeeper. Now, April's different. If you're in for April for JobKeeper as an eligible employer, you just need to get FN 01 on a pay in the month of April and get that uploaded to the ATO as soon as possible through single touch payroll. But if you're not starting JobKeeper until, let's say, June, you'll probably use fortnight 05 as your first JobKeeper-start-FN 05 for those employees or eligible employees as soon as you start to become an eligible employer. So, you know, these numbers will be changing depending on your specific circumstances as to when you start the JobKeeper program as an eligible employer, and the employees are eligible as well. So let's deep dive into the software. We'll go into Reckon Accounts and we'll actually have a look at how this actually works and hopefully solve a few questions that you've got in your mind at the moment. So first of all, we need to actually set up the item. You know, and these three items, top up, start, and finish. Now, you may never use finish. You know, if you don't use it in the 13th period, if the JobKeeper program just finishes, you know, the ATO knows that it's going to finish. Finish item is just used when someone leaves or is no longer eligible for JobKeeper. So we'll come back to that in a minute and we'll just show you the setup. But essentially, first of all, you need a top-up item. So if people, if your eligible employees get paid less than $1,500 in a fortnight, and this is a JobKeeper fortnight, going back to those dates of the fortnights of 1 to 13, this actually needs to be created. So you need JobKeeper-top-up, all in capital letters, no extra spaces, no full stops, nothing else extra. It needs to be identically to how it's set up here. It's going to be set up as an addition item. So when you actually create it, so if we right mouse click and we'll go to new here, you choose addition as the actual type. That's really important. And so let's go through here and we'll see what actually other settings we need. You may want to create a sub account to your salaries and wages to actually categorize this JobKeeper payment to, or the amount that you're paying to employees. You don't have to do that. It'll show up on your payroll reports, but you may want to create a sub account to catch the JobKeeper top up so you can see how much it is. This is really important. Tax tracking type must be allowances-other. That's the tax tracking type. If that's not right, if you haven't set up that correctly, the ATO will possibly not know that you're trying to claim JobKeeper for this particular employee. It's taxable, so the top up is taxable. You know, it's $1,500 before tax. So the employee doesn't get $1,500; they'll have tax taken out of that. So we do need to tick pay-as-you-go tax. State payroll tax, it's only really relevant if you're around that threshold of whatever it is for your state, but some states will class the JobKeeper top-up as a taxable wage for state payroll tax, some won't. So you can choose depending on your state's circumstances. Based on quantity, just set that to neither at this point. In this screen, we don't have any set amounts because it will vary per person, and untick the annual limit there as well. There's no super on the top up. So you do not have to pay your normal SGC super, 9.5% or whatever it is, on the actual top up payment. It's optional. You can choose to pay it, but you don't have to. We'll set up these other two items. We'll have a look at now the JobKeeper-Start-FN01. It's again another, it's an allowance or an addition, sorry, that's been set up. Again, you can code it to top up the salaries and wages JobKeeper top up. It's going to be a nil amount, so it doesn't really matter what account you put it to. It's got to be an allowances-other tax tracking type. That's where it shows up. If you were still printing the old group certificates or payment summaries, that's where it would end up as a other allowance, and the ATO needs it done like that. No tax, no state payroll tax. Leave those unticked or untick them. Put to neither as calculate based on quantity. No rates in here, untick the annual limit. And of course, there's no super on this. It's going to be a nil amount anyway. And so then the finish item, exactly the same, you know, but that wording needs to be as it is, and the FN, that the two numbers after FN would be the period in which, or the fortnight in which, the eligible employee had finished being a part of JobKeeper. So when does that happen? Well, it's when someone leaves. You know, that would be one example where they actually are no longer eligible. They've left employment. They can't, they're no longer part of being employed by an eligible employer. And you can only have JobKeeper once. Employees can't jump around between employers for JobKeeper. So if we go into next here, again, salaries and wages top up, we'll put that to the sub account. It's going to be a nil amount, this transaction anyway. We've got allowances-other, super important that that is actually in there. We'll go to next, pay-as-you-go is unticked, state payroll tax is unticked. Go to neither, nothing's selected here, and super is not ticked. So we've got those base items actually set up. So the question we're getting a lot is, look, I'm finishing April at the moment, and technically I've got up until the 8th of May to actually square up April and make sure I've paid my top-ups. So what do I do? You know, I've already lodged my pays, many of the pays actually for April. How do I apply these items? How do I go back and actually perhaps edit a payroll to tell the tax office that I'm starting in fortnight 1 for my JobKeeper claim? And that's important. You actually will need to do that. So if you've already paid an employee in the month of April, you need to go back and add this JobKeeper Start-FN01 and add it to one of the pays that you've actually made in April. We would suggest ideally it's a pay on or before the 26th of April. That was the end of the second fortnight in April. But the ATO is sort of basically saying, look, it can be any period here up until the 30th of April. In fact, they've extended it to the 8th of May. So get it done as quickly as possible. We would suggest going back into a pay period before the 26th of April. And that's what we'll do. We'll actually go and look at our payroll summary report. And the other thing is, you may not have paid the full top-up amount for these employees. You might still need to get them up to the $3,000 that you would have needed who have paid them in order to be eligible for the JobKeeper subsidy. The ATO is going to pay you that $3,000 or 2 lots of $1,500 for the month of April. And so if we go into our payroll summary, I can see here that we've run the payroll summary for the 2 fortnights that exist in April. So from the 30th of March to the 26th of April, because that's the 2 fortnights that the ATO is expecting to see the $3,000 having been paid. And again, I know I said April is a transition month, so we could well then look at the whole month of April and technically up to the 8th of May, which is going to confuse a lot of people trying to push April payments into May for the purposes of this top-up. But we'll stick to the 26th of April here. So we can see that, look, have I paid more than $3,000 to my eligible employees? Barry's part of the program. In fact, I'll go back to my payroll item list, and I've my employee center. And what I've done is actually I've gone through and tagged and set up an item for everyone who is in fact eligible. And if you want to have a quick look at that, I've just set that up under additional info. So if you've got some available fields here, we can go to define fields and set up some new items. Are they eligible for JobKeeper? What was their start fortnight? And did they have an actual finish fortnight? Did they leave the business? And so I've actually worked out that I've got 4 eligible employees for JobKeeper. 2 aren't. One's a casual under the age of 16, and I've got a international worker that actually doesn't qualify because of their visa type. So if I go back then, and if I look at my payroll summary report, and I'm actually running that, if I go back into, where are they? So the 30th of March to the 26th of April, have I paid enough? Have I paid the $3,000? Now you've got to determine this first. So you may have to make a top-up payment. And as I said, you've got until the 8th of May to make that payment. And so we look at Betty there and see, no, we haven't paid enough money. We're at $2,200. We need to actually pay another $800. Greg, we're a bit short as well. Kenneth, we've paid enough. Muriel, we're a bit short. And Ronnie and Samantha are not eligible. So there's 2 things that need to happen here. One is we need to go back into a previous pay and add that JobKeeper-Start-Fortnight FN 01, because this business is eligible to claim JobKeeper for the month of April. So we have to get that added to the existing pays, and we also need to turn around and add a top-up payment. Now, I wouldn't go back and change a pay. You've already issued that pay. You've sent it to the employee. The pay slip has been created. You've made the payment out of your bank account. The top-up would need to be one of 2 things. It would need to be added to the next pay run, or a unscheduled pay run to actually just record the top-up. So let's look, first of all, we'll look at these individual pays that have happened here. So I'll actually drill down on Barry first of all. And we've got 2 fortnights here, one ending the 12th, one ending the 26th. All we need to do for Barry is, because we've paid him more than $3,000, we actually need to set up we need to include the payroll item of JobKeeper-Start-FN 01. So let's go and put it back on the first pay run that actually happened in April. So I'm just going to unlock the net pay, say okay, and then I move down into my other payroll items here, and I just tag FN 01. This is only done once. Don't do it again. Don't start putting 02 in the next month or anything like that. It's just done initially when the employee is eligible and the employer has registered and is eligible for that month. And obviously the number will change. If you register in May, it's going to be a different number, depending on the fortnight number that actually is in May when you first registered. So JobKeeper Fortnight 01 is in for Barry. I'm then going to say okay to that. I'm going to save that. I'm going to then move on actually to the next person. And we'll just save that entry there. So we'll actually look at Betty. Betty, we need that in there. I know we haven't quite paid her enough money yet. That's okay. We'll come back and fix that up. But we actually wanted to recognize that we want to put a start item. We need to put that start allowance into her master file, or into this pay, sorry. So we're going to say okay to that and recognize that she now is eligible for JobKeeper from the first fortnight as well. The next person that we want to actually have a look at here, we've handled Betty, and you can start to see now down here additions to net pay. It's showing up that we've got these additions. If you're starting to see them up the top here, it's probably because you've set up the item incorrectly and you haven't set it up as an addition type. Let's look at Greg. He's eligible. We'll go back to that first pay there. We'll go into the detail, unlock the net pay, and add that particular item to his pay. We'll say okay to that. The next person that we want to have a look at here, if I jump out of there, Kenneth, he's also an eligible employee. We'll go and actually, he's just had one pay that's happened in this pay period. He's a salaried employee. We've paid him more than $3,000 in the salary. $3,250 actually, if you're continuing to pay each month. The ATO will pay you $3,000. But in August, they'll pay you $4,500. So it all sort of catches up in the month of August because there's 3 fortnights in August. And we're going to unlock that net pay. Make sure no net amounts change here because we don't want anything to change to what's happened on that pay run. And we're just going to say fortnight 01. It's asking, do you want us to add this to their permanent record in their master file? The answer is no. We're just doing this once. We're not actually, don't want to see it appearing next time. It's just done once in this particular pay. And so we'll save and close that as well. And we'll go back and who else have we got here? And we've got Muriel, and she's also eligible. So I'll go back to the first pay that we've done for her. There's a few in there, and we'll actually go into the 12th, into the paycheck detail, and we'll unlock the net pay, and then include the JobKeeper start fortnight 01. Say okay to that. Now, what this is going to do is actually, if we go back to our payroll summary report, you can see with JobKeeper start fortnight 01, we can't quite see who's used it because they're all nil amounts. But if you double click on the total over on the right-hand side here, what you'll actually see is a list of who's had that item applied to their pay run and when. So we can see all of these on the 12th and Kenneth on the 15th. So what we've got to do is actually we need to let the tax office know that. You might have already lodged your single touch payroll and you probably have submitted the STP event for that pay period. So we're going to have to go back and do what's known as an update event for these people and for Kenneth on the 15th and actually submit those details to the ATO because we've got to tell them that we are actually starting JobKeeper and we've got fortnight 01 in there. What that means is the ATO is going to recognise that and see that, and as part of your claim that's going to happen on around the 4th of May or whenever you actually compile it, the ATO is going to have that information displaying for you that these are the eligible employees that we've actually received information from via the single touch payroll system. So if they're not in there, if you haven't got this item, they're not going to appear actually in your claim that you need to make with the ATO in order to receive your JobKeeper subsidy. So while we're here, we might as well go and do a couple of pays actually for Betty and for Greg and for Muriel, and we'll actually process some pays there to actually get them up to the $3,000. So we need to do a top up of $800 for Betty. So if I'll go in and actually go to the employee center, we'll go to here and we'll do an unscheduled pay run. And this is, this could well be today that we're actually doing this pay run on the date of, where are we there? This is a sample file, so we've got an odd date there. But if we go to the 30th of the 4th in 2020, we can actually say that we're processing this pay, and if you are, today. So if I look at Betty, what I want to do is I don't want to pay her any of these pay items that she normally earns. I'm going to Control delete and take those line items out or just zero them out. But I do want to actually, I don't need the fortnight 01 for her. I've already included that before, but I do have this top up item and I actually put this in a little earlier for her. And so you need to have a top up and we've got to get it up to $3,000. And if I went back to our payroll report, and I think we had $800 that we actually needed to include in here for her. And it's taxable, so there will be tax on this. Normally, you'll just do the top up when you're doing the weekly or fortnightly pay. because you'll know the second pay in a fortnight for a weekly, or your fortnight's pay, you'll know to actually make sure that you're paying $1,500. So I'm going to say save and close that. I'm actually going to go back to the payroll summary just to make sure I've got the right numbers here. So it was 800 for Betty. It was 1,180 for Greg. So if I go back into there, we've got Greg, and we'll tick him. Whoop, there we are. We're going to actually include 1,180 in his top up. I don't want that JobKeeper FN01 in there again. So if I save and close that, and if I go back to the employee center, sorry, the payroll summary report, that'll get him up to where I need to. And then obviously Muriel, I've got $264 that I need to put in there for Muriel. And if we go back into here, we'll tick Muriel, and we'll take out our hours, and we'll put a top up of $264 and also take out this line item as well. So I'll save and close that. I'll actually run this pay run. This is up until the 30th. So we're now sitting here on the 30th processing this pay. And now if I go back into my payroll summary report, remembering I'll have to change it to the 30th, because I want to now see that I've paid $3,000 for the eligible employees at least, and I can see that I've got a minimum of $3,000. And then you can obviously see that the top up components are actually in here as well. Now the thing to remember here is that in April we're playing catch up. Normally you have to have paid this $1,500 each JobKeeper fortnight. And if you haven't done that, the ATO is going to know about that. They're going to match up paid dates with employees, and they're going to check in the future after April, probably after May even, because it's going to be hard for them to do it in May, but they're going to know whether you've paid that $1,500 or not through the single touch payroll system. The other thing to consider here too is we've made a payment on the 30th of April. Now, technically, the 30th of April is actually part of May for the JobKeeper fortnights. The third fortnight in the JobKeeper system actually runs from the 27th of April through to the 10th of May. So you've got to remember, when you do your May reports, don't count this one. Don't count the figure, the top up that we put in April, even though it was after the second fortnight for April. This is where you're going to have to do some reconciling. You almost have to look at the start of the JobKeeper system being the 30th of March through to the end of the second fortnight in May, when you're doing your May claim, to see that you've paid that $6,000 minimum to each employee. Otherwise, you've got to do a top up before the actual 24th of May, which is the last day of the fortnight, the second fortnight in May. So we've done the top ups, we've created those actual items, and now what you can do, you've sort of got a choice right now. For those people that we've done the top up, we could go and lodge the single touch payroll pay run, obviously, for the top ups that we've just created. And in amongst that will be the year-to-date figure being the JobKeeper-Start-FN01. I'd probably prefer to go back and do this in two steps. One is going back and lodge an update event for those pays that you added that FN01 Start JobKeeper item. Do that first. Now, the way to do this is if we go to employees and we go down to process single touch payroll, from here, we'd actually choose the pay run that we knew. And we knew that there was the 12th, and also there was one person on the 15th. Now, ideally, you would just select those people that you want to do an update event for. And so this is a 2019 version, but in the 2020 version, you just select a down arrow here and you choose update event. And so in this case, we know that we've got, if we went back to our payroll summary and we had a look at, well, who was this that we did these for? So it was Barry, Betty, Greg, and Muriel. And if I go back into Barry, Betty, Greg, and Muriel, and then we can go and create then a lodgement or an export, if you're using 2020 version, and go and actually submit this update event to the tax office. We'd obviously also need to turn around and for Kenneth on the 15th, go and do an update event for him as well if we've already previously lodged our pays. You'd then naturally have to turn around and for the 30th, then go and lodge, and we won't, if we've just done those top-ups, just select all of those and actually go and create a regular pay event because we haven't submitted that to the ATO as yet. So trying to get it squared up in April is perfect. Certainly, if you've already paid your employees minimum $3,000 in April, and you only have to add the JobKeeper-Start-FN01 item, then just go back and add it. Get it added, ideally on perhaps the first pay run in the JobKeeper period from the 30th of March. Remember, it's also the paid date. It's not the pay period. It's not the week that they've worked or anything like that. It's the date that you've paid the employees that are absolutely critical with this. They have to have been paid within these within these JobKeeper fortnights. So when you're uploading your STP event then to the tax office, you've got to select, when I go back into here and we look at single touch payroll and we've exported the file, when you upload, by default, it'll try to say, well, are you uploading a new pay run? No, you're updating a previously completed submission. It's an update. So tick that bottom radio button. Now, some people will use full file replacement if it's everyone in the pay run that's getting updated. That's fine. You can do that. The ATO is sort of saying they're not a real big fan of full file replacement for this purpose with JobKeeper. So that they're actually preferring that you do an actual update event. And then when you read that in, what you'll see is actually, this is not a great screenshot because when you upload an update event, it'll be nil values here. But when you go into the detailed, and I would suggest you do this, you go into the detail for each individual employee, you'll see the year-to-date figures. But again, that doesn't tell us too much, except that we've got allowances here, and maybe that's a top-up. But when you drill then right down into the detail of the individual employee, you'll start to see what's going on. And you can see here, we've got JobKeeper-Start-FN01 for Barry, and that's what you'd expect to see. You've got a top-up for Betty. You've got then, you'd go through each employee to make sure that they're representing the right information for that relevant employee. Just to wrap up, I would also then run your reports. So your payroll summary report, you would run that normally you'd run this for the 2 fortnights and 3 fortnights in August, but for the fortnights dates that exist for the month that you're going to make a single touch payroll claim for. Now, if April was a standard month, that would just be from the 30th of March through to the 26th of April. But it's not. We're playing catch up here again. 30th of April, we've actually squared up and got our minimum $3,000 in there for each eligible employee. So store that report. That needs to sort of be with your paperwork. Remember though, when you go to do May's report, and May's, the 3rd fortnight of JobKeeper starts on the 27th of April. So be aware that when you're running your reports from the 27th of April through to the 24th of May, or the first fortnight that actually ends on the 10th of May, if you've got some payments from the 27th of April through to the 30th in here that relate to the April claim month for JobKeeper, don't double up. You've got to do a reconciliation to find out, oh yeah, that's right, that payment on the 30th of April was relating to really the 26th of April fortnight end for JobKeeper. So that's why you'd look at sort of these 2 months together, and make sure that you've got to start paying after April. You have to pay that $1,500 per fortnight minimum to eligible employees. If they work more than that, obviously you pay them more than that, and you won't be paying a top up. But to get them up to that figure for $1,500, if you've got to pay a top up, that has to be paid within the JobKeeper fortnight defined by the tax office, which is that list that we saw earlier. That's it. I know there was a lot in there, but it was just a quick update to say, look, this is what we're seeing at the moment. We're getting lots of calls around this. Make sure you just pay attention to the components. If you've got any further queries, by all means, reach out to us. It's something we can help you with, your advisors, your accountants, you know, the people that you're working with to actually get this sorted for you, get in touch with them. But by all means, we're here to help as well. So that's it. Stay healthy, everybody. There'll be more of these short updates coming out as time goes on, because there's things changing all the time. Thanks a lot.